Rick Harrison just lost everything that mattered most to him, and you won't believe how dark his story really gets. The man we all know as the tough boss of Pawn Stars is falling apart behind the cameras. Right now in 2025, Rick Harrison is facing the worst time of his entire life. His son is dead, his show got canceled, his own mother is suing him for millions, and his family is completely broken. But the real story is so much worse than anyone knows. Let me tell you exactly what happened to Rick Harrison and why everything went wrong so fast. This story will shock you because the Rick we see on TV is nothing like the real person. January 19th, 2024 started like any normal day for Rick. He was probably at his pawn shop doing business as usual. Then his phone rang. The call that would destroy his world forever. His son Adam was dead. Just like that, his 39-year-old son was gone. Adam died from taking too much drugs by accident. He mixed dangerous stuff like fentanyl and meth together in some guest house in Las Vegas. Rick couldn't believe it. His own son had been fighting drug addiction for years, and Rick knew about it. He even helped Adam go to rehab and stayed with him during recovery. But nothing worked. Adam's problems were too deep, and the drugs finally won. Here's something most people don't know about Adam. He actually worked at the gold and silver pawn shop for a while. But unlike his brother Corey, Adam hated being around all the cameras and attention. The pressure was too much for him. He couldn't handle the crazy busy life of running a famous pawn shop, so he quit. Adam wanted to stay away from the Pawn Stars spotlight completely. Maybe if he stayed on the show, Rick could have watched him better. Maybe Adam would still be alive today. Rick blames himself every single day. After Adam died, Rick made a public statement that shocked everyone. He said the government's border policies were responsible for his son's death. Rick was angry and looking for someone to blame. The drugs that killed Adam came from somewhere, and Rick wanted answers. But blaming politics won't bring his son back. The pain of losing Adam is eating Rick alive, and it shows in everything he does now. But losing Adam was just the beginning of Rick's nightmare year. In February 2025, something happened that nobody saw coming. The History Channel dropped Pawn Stars completely. After 22 seasons of being one of their biggest shows, they decided not to give Rick and his team a new contract. Pawn Stars made the History Channel millions of dollars. It was their highest-rated show for years. It even beat almost every other reality show on TV except Jersey Shore back in 2011. Rick wrote a best-selling book about his life because the show was so popular. Everything seemed perfect. So why would they cancel such a successful show? The truth is that Rick's personal problems started affecting the business. All the legal troubles, family fights, and bad publicity made the network nervous. They didn't want to be connected to all the drama anymore. Rick doesn't want to admit the show is canceled, though. He keeps saying it's just on pause and he's working on something called Pawn Stars 2.0. But let's be honest, when a TV network doesn't renew your contract, that usually means it's over forever. Rick and his friend Chumley aren't giving up, though. They started their own podcast called Pawn After Dark in February 2025. They're trying to keep making money from their fame while they can. But a podcast isn't the same as having a major TV show. Rick went from being one of the most famous people on television to struggling just to stay relevant. That has to hurt his ego big time. The worst part is that Rick's own family is abandoning him when he needs them most. His son Corey decided he's completely done with Pawn Stars and doesn't want anything to do with the show anymore. Corey won't even talk about renewing his contract. Instead of staying to help his dad during this tough time, Corey packed his bags and moved to Mexico. He's living in a fancy vacation spot called Tulum, where rich people go to relax on beautiful beaches. Corey said his dad will work until he collapses, but that's not the life he wants. So he just left Rick to deal with everything alone. Corey is planning to open a barbecue restaurant in Mexico called Big Horse's Smoking Joint. He's using his celebrity status to get investors interested. But here's the crazy part about why Corey really left. He basically admitted that Pawn Stars is fake. Corey said that after years of being on the show, all the cast members started acting like characters instead of being themselves. He got tired of pretending to be a young guy when he's actually 41 years old now. Corey said he can't play another season of fake personality. This means that the Rick we see on TV might not be the real Rick either. So who is the real Rick Harrison? Well, the truth about his personality is pretty disturbing. Despite what the show makes you think, Rick doesn't actually have much patience with customers. There have been multiple incidents where Rick lost his temper and got violent with people who came to his shop. The worst one happened recently when Rick got into a huge fight with a customer over money. They started arguing about the price of something and Rick completely lost control. He threatened to beat up the customer so badly that the person had to run out of the store for their own safety. The customer immediately called the police on Rick. When the cops showed up, they arrested Rick right there in his own pawn shop. He got charged with trying to hurt someone on purpose, which is a serious crime. Rick had to go to court and he pleaded guilty because he knew he was wrong. The judge sentenced him to 2 years of probation and 30 days of community service. Rick said he was ashamed of what he did and promised to be more professional, but the damage was already done. His fans realized that the calm, cool Rick from TV was just an act. This wasn't even Rick's first time having problems with customers. Back in 2011, a 62-year-old disabled war veteran brought a gun to the pawn shop to get it appraised. The man's name was Daniel, and he served in Vietnam. According to Daniel, Rick and his dad got into a big argument with him. Daniel claimed that Rick and his father grabbed him by the throat, dragged him through the store, and threw him outside onto the sidewalk like trash. Daniel sued them for $20,000 for the injuries he said they gave him. Rick denied everything, but the story shows a pattern of Rick having anger issues with customers. The problems don't stop with Rick either. His whole TV family has serious issues. Chum Lee, the funny guy everyone loves, got arrested in 2016 for having illegal drugs and weapons in his house. The police came to investigate Chum Lee for sexually assaulting a woman, but they didn't find evidence for that. Instead, they found crystal meth, marijuana, prescription drugs, and a bunch of guns that he wasn't supposed to have. Chum Lee got charged with 20 different crimes. He had to make a deal with the court to avoid going to prison. Even Corey got arrested in 2023 for drunk driving. The police stopped him at 2 in the morning because he was driving like he was drunk. He failed the sobriety test and spent the night in jail. But the most shocking betrayal came from Rick's own mother. In 2022, his mom, Joanne, sued him for stealing her business. She claimed that Rick doesn't actually own the gold and silver pawn shop at all. According to Joanne, she is the real owner, and Rick has been lying to everyone for years. Joanne said that when her husband opened the pawn shop in 1989, she owned 51% of the business, and her husband owned 49%. When she got really sick in the early 2000s and had to stay in the hospital, Rick brought her papers to sign. She says she wasn't thinking clearly because of her illness and didn't understand what the papers meant. Rick tricked her into signing away her ownership of the business. When Rick's father died in 2018, Joanne thought she inherited his 49% share too. That would make her the owner of 100% of the pawn shop. She expected Rick to give her complete financial information about the business since she thought he was just her employee, but Rick refused to show her the money records. Joanne accused Rick of stealing $3 million by taking out loans using her property as security without asking her. She also said that Rick couldn't account for over $100,000 in cash and $500,000 worth of silver that her husband had before he died. The mother and son fight got even nastier when it came to money. Joanne said Rick used to pay her $25,000 every month from the business. Then he cut it down to $20,000 per month. During COVID in 2020, he only gave her $85,000 for the entire year. Eventually, Rick stopped giving his own mother any money at all. Joanne needs $15,000 every month just to pay for her medical expenses because of her health problems. When Rick cut off her money, she couldn't afford her medications and treatments. Joanne got so desperate that she filed a court order to stop Rick from taking any more money out of the business. She wanted to prevent him from selling anything or cutting off what she believed was her rightful income. This was probably the lowest point in Rick's life. His own mother was calling him a thief and a liar in front of the whole world. Rick said that other people were manipulating his mother and making her believe false things about him. He claimed he always acted in the best interest of the business. But if that's true, why won't he show her the financial records? The case seems to have been settled quietly, but we don't know what really happened. All of these problems combined to make 2025 the worst year of Rick's life. He lost his son to drugs, his TV show got canceled, his remaining son moved to another country, his mother sued him for millions, his reputation is destroyed because people know he has anger problems. The Pawn Stars empire that took decades to build is crashing down around him. Rick went from being a beloved TV personality to someone who can't even get a contract renewal. But there might be one bright spot in all this darkness. Rick got engaged to a woman named Angie in 2024. They started dating right after Rick divorced. His fourth wife, Amanda, in 2023. Rick and Angie have an 18-year age gap between them, but they seem really happy together. Rick proposed to Angie during a romantic trip to Chile with a huge 6.5-carat diamond ring from his own pawn shop. This will be Rick's fifth marriage after 4 previous ones failed. Maybe Angie can help Rick deal with all his problems and become a better person. The question everyone wants answered is whether Rick will ever bounce back from this disaster. Right now, he's keeping a very low profile compared to his usual public appearances. He's probably trying to figure out how to save what's left of his career and reputation. The podcast with Chumlee might help them stay relevant for a while, but it's nothing compared to having a major television show. Rick built his entire identity around being the boss of Pawn Stars. Without that show, who is Rick Harrison really? Maybe this is actually a good thing for Rick in the long run. He's been living a lie for years, pretending to be someone he's not on television. The fake nice guy act was making him miserable and causing him to explode on customers when the cameras weren't rolling. Now that everything has fallen apart, Rick has a chance to be honest about who he really is. He can work on his anger problems, fix his relationship with his family, and try to become the person his fans thought he was all along. The story of Rick Harrison shows us that fame and money don't solve your personal problems. Rick had everything most people dream about. He was rich, famous, and successful, but he still lost his son to drugs, destroyed his family relationships, and ended up alone with his empire crumbling. Maybe if Rick had been more honest from the beginning and gotten help for his issues, things would have turned out differently. Now he's paying the price for years of pretending everything was fine when it really wasn't. Subscribe right now because Rick's story gets even crazier and you need to see what happens next in his complete downfall.